Hi there. My name is Mike Clayson, and this is my friend
Walter Von Hune.
And we haven't done one of these for a while because just things, holidays, and Walter, his wife's been having problems, and so he's been taking care of her, and I had to go to a funeral for an old friend. So it's just, what do they say? What do they say? Man plans and God smiles, and that's really what's happening right now. But we're back.
Yep, just so you know, my wife doesn't have problems. She had knee replacement surgery. So when he says my wife had problems, I said, yeah, she's married to me, but that's a whole other story.
Okay, that was
but
generalization. Yeah.
we were talking, and we're both from Southern California originally, and so we were talking about the recent fires that Southern California had, and something like they've never seen before. And I remember fires there when I was a kid and growing up, and I'm sure you did too.
I did. Fire was always a thing. It was always, every summer there was fires. I remember one particular summer when I was about 10 or 11, and we lived in the valley, in the East Valley, San Fernando Valley, and the entire rim of mountains around the valley was on fire, including an oil well, which was on fire by itself, and which was really cool because the movie Hellfighters had come out with John Wayne, and they actually called the Hellfighters in to fight that fire, which really? I thought was way cool.
Wow. Yeah, but we were used to the Santa Ana winds, but apparently this last fire, or the fires that they had, are like, with the Santa Ana winds are nothing like they'd seen before. 70, 80 to 100 mile per hour winds.
Yeah.
And I know people in Pacific Palisades who lost their home, and also in the Eaton fire in Altadena area who lost their homes. It's unbelievably tragic what you go through when you lose your house.
And that happened to you, Walter.
Yeah, because it happened to us. Actually, in Northern California, in the Tubbs fire in 2017.
Which is ironic because you lived in fire country your whole life. You move out of fire country, move out to the coast of California, and then your house gets burned down.
It was pretty amazing. At 3 o'clock in the morning, we got a phone call that said, get out now, the fire's coming. We grabbed what we could quickly and left, and then by 5 o'clock, the house and the entire neighborhood was gone. And so we learned a few things from that experience.
Right. And I will say too that thank God my house didn't burn down, but the last fire that we were in, station fire, in 2010, the fire came right down to houses across the street from us.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just the fire and the evacuations surrounding the fire, but then the county felt the need to put K-rails all the way around our house to protect it from what they expected were going to be mudslides.
Yeah, right.
Sure enough, it rained like hell that winter. And we were evacuated. We ended up living with my daughter down in Redondo Beach in her studio apartment for Cindy, my wife, and our dog and me with my daughter in a studio apartment until we were allowed to come back to the house.
Did the mud ever get into the house or anything?
No, and it didn't. The K-rails worked, and it worked out fine.
Oh, that's good.
But I know that's the next step here for the people in Palisades and also in Altadena. They're going to be dealing with heavy rain, because that's what always happens after one of these big fires, is we get big rains. If not this winter, it'll show up unseasonably in the spring or really early next fall. And it doesn't really matter from a flooding perspective. It's the same, and it's after a fire goes through and burns everything, it glazes the ground so that it's water resistant. So the water just, as the rain hits the ground, it hits this glazed ground, and it just runs right off, and it just floods. It floods areas that you would never expect because it's never happened before.
Did you learn anything with your fire experience that you hadn't thought of before?
No, I mean, the things that you talked about before in previous videos about planning and being prepared and having go bags and stuff like that. I mean, that was part of our life. But in terms of learning things, the reality is if you're going to live in these areas, this is something that you have to expect. I mean, our house was newer, and it had concrete shingles for a roof.
Yeah, yeah.
And it had enclosed stucco eaves.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those sorts of things that try and protect it from fire. But even then, we had, because we liked them, we had big trees that were out in front of the house, and now with this new way, I think it's new because it's new to me, of these high winds with the high fire. I don't think any of that stuff would help from what I've seen.
Interestingly enough, where we live up here in Washington, in a community called Jubilee, and we're kind of separated from the other areas, so to speak, and we're near woods. My house in particular, on 3 sides, has nothing but, they call them wetlands, but when it's dry, it's not wet, believe me. And if there is a fire, and I have thought about this, and people say, you do the clearance, when those embers blow, you can have a 50-foot clearance,
right,
and those embers are going to come to your house. I mean, I've experienced that. I saw that. It blew across the 101 freeway, 6-lane freeway, and burned a whole neighborhood on the other side.
right.
And so, to me, it's like, okay, I know what I need to take if we have to get out. And the most important thing to me actually now, stuff can be replaced. That's stuff can always be replaced. But how hard would it be to get a birth certificate again, to get, all of the paperwork that you have?
Yeah.
If you have a will, if you have, everything, I would grab that stuff immediately, throw it in the car, just so that I have that. And as I've told people too, make sure you have half a tank of gas in your car, because if you got to drive, gas stations aren't your friends, because a lot of them won't be open,
right.
which happened to us.
The power's going to be out, and they're not going to be able to pump gas even if they want to. So signals are going to be out.
But it could happen here. That's the thing.
It
could happen here. I'm very cognizant of that. Actually, Kimberly and I, we looked when we were thinking of coming up and moving up at another community, which is, I can't remember the name of it actually, but it was near Mount Rainier, and there was one road in for about 3 miles or 4 miles, and one road out. And there were other communities there too. And I'm thinking to myself, if there's a fire and you got to get out and you have this one road, forget about it. Because another time we were evacuated, and it took us an hour and a half to go about 3 miles to get out, because everyone had to leave. And there were other ways to go there. So I don't want to be caught in that type of situation.
Yeah, I agree completely. I'm not as worried about fire here as I was where we used to live, because of the weather, for one thing.
Right.
It's 34 degrees outside right now, and raining, so that's good. But the other thing I'm concerned about is that the fire departments, in the past, my experience in living in Southern California and working for the city of Los Angeles, and being around the fire department, they were like a military organization. They were very rigid about how they planned for things. They were very much like the Army, except that instead of bullets and the enemy people they were shooting at, they had water and suppress it, and they had fire as the enemy. But in terms of attacking, it was the same kinds of strategies. They used vehicles, mobile fire trucks, and planes to try and attack the fire. And they pre-positioned equipment, and they took people off of leaves and called people back from vacation and from days off. And they knew exactly. They always knew almost to the gallon how much water was available. And I'm not sensing that kind of preparedness now from Los Angeles, and I'm certainly not sensing it from up here. I think the focus on the fire department has become more life rescue, doing a lot of rescue ambulance type stuff. They're not focused so much on what happens if a community catches fire so much as what happens if a house catches on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the infrastructure up here especially is is oriented around that. And I would like to see more planning going into what happens if we do have one of those events up here where there's a lot of wind, and we do get wind events. We just haven't had a wind event with with low humidity and high fire danger. So
Yeah.
I really would like to see that up here.
What do you think was the cause? As you said, they were not proactive in putting out fire trucks and spotting for fires that might start immediately in LA during this last fire. But what was the real cause of the fire hydrants running out of water or not having enough pressure to pump water? What's the cause of that? Because that was a big concern.
Yeah, it is. It's always been a concern. You know, there's an old saying about how all government regulation is based on blood. Have you ever heard that term?
No.
So you have a bad event that happens, people get killed, and then regulations come in to try and prevent that from ever happening again. You know, LA went through a series of devastating wildfires in the late 60s, where Bel Air and parts of Brentwood and Beverly Hills and the Hollywood Hills burned, and they burned whole communities. And as a consequence, the fire department, along with other agencies, said we need to rethink this stuff. And that's when they were putting big water tanks up on the hillsides and oversized water mains in the street to handle fires. But over time, I think, you know, even though they've learned these lessons in blood, other priorities start to come in, and they haven't had a bad fire for a long time, and they haven't had a situation where you've got high winds and fire danger at the same time. And so it just stops the sort of the agency memory kind of fades, and the people who were involved in those incidents and who had leadership experience in those areas, they retire, they go away. They're not backfilled with people with the same priorities. And I think the fire departments need to refocus on their number one priority, which is to put fire out, to be prepared to put fire out in the event that there is one, like there was in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I truly believe that they just weren't prepared, and Karen Bass, the mayor, was very ill prepared for what was happening there at the time. And you know, I just feel so sorry for the people I know who lost their homes and everything they own, because I identify with them and I know what they're going through. You know, the question that you have is, you know, you're living in a hotel because the insurance is paying that, and you're saying, where can I get a place? And when you have a catastrophic fires like this, rental is really hard. It's so hard to find because everyone's looking for a place. And I know some of those landlords are jacking up the prices and trying to, you know, take advantage. And it brings me to another point, and this is something that irks the hell out of me. Looters. You know, they have a law on the books, I believe, you're a lawyer, you would know, that if you loot, I think you get 2 years or 3 years in prison or something if you're convicted. To me, if you're a looter and you're going into a disaster area, I don't care if it's an earthquake, a fire, a flood, or whatever, and you have devastation everywhere, and you got these people who are coming in and looting and taking advantage of the tragedy that people are suffering, those sons of bitches, to me, excuse my language, but they should be thrown away for 10 to 15 years at least.
Yeah.
And I think the law should be changed to reflect that, because you've lost everything you own, everything, and some person comes to your property and digs through there and finds a gold ring or something that belongs to you. Or for that matter, your house didn't burn and all the homes around you, and they're in that house ransacking it.
Right.
I hate that.
That's what is happening is people who maybe avoided having their houses burned down and now are having them trashed by looters, stealing everything. I agree. It should be. I mean, in the old days, it used to be shoot to kill. Looters.
Yeah.
They don't do that anymore, but
Yeah.
it certainly needs to be strong punishments for those people.
I don't know if you heard that one story about this couple that was driving into the fire zone in a fire truck,
I read about that.
dressed as fire people, as a fireman, a man and a woman.
Yeah.
They weren't. They were there to take advantage of the situation, trying to hide themselves as firemen or fire people, and they're in there to take stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm going, are you kidding me? Now, what are they going to do? They're going to get 2-3 years, maybe, as a sentence.
If they even prosecute
If they even prosecute them. That just irks me to no end for people who do that.
Yeah, I mean, I remember during the '71 Selma earthquake, you know, they cordoned off a whole section of the northeast San Bernardino Valley and wouldn't let anybody in there. And my friend, one of the friend that just died, and his girlfriend and I snuck in because we were living within that zone, and we snuck in through a break in the security, and we had cops on us with shotguns pulled.
Oh,
I mean, they were ready to kill us until they figured out who we were. And those are the '70s.
Yeah, we had, well, in 2017, when, you know, everything outside of Santa Rosa, really, Fountain Grove and the hills there where we lived, they had the National Guard blocking the streets, the main roads, to get into the area. And the only way that we got in, our friends who we were staying with, the wife does search and rescue, and she's certified to go and do that, and she got us in to look at our property, which was still smoldering as were the other properties around, but nobody could get, and they're there with their guns ready to protect it. But if somebody's walking, they can still walk in around. You just can't drive into that situation. But it's devastating for the fires, and I think about up here, like we talked about, what could happen, and to be prepared. That's all you can do.
I do really think politicians, they lose focus when things are going smoothly. I mean, they are reactive to the crisis of the moment, and they're not paying attention to some things that were bad in the past historically and were remediated. And if they don't keep those remediations up, that they're going to have the same problem and circle back around to them. I mean, you mentioned Karen Bass as someone who is responsible. I think that's probably true, at least for the city of LA. There's some blame to be laid there, but Altadena's in the county. Yeah. In the unincorporated area of the county of Los Angeles.
Right, that's true.
That's outside the city, so that's not her fault.
Right.
But the 5 supervisors there should take responsibility for that. But even, the county, the LA County Fire Department is massive. It's hard to imagine how many resources it has in terms of helicopters and trucks and stations and staff. They just have a lot, and they've got all these mutual aid agreements in place all over. There's 88 cities within the county. Almost every one of those cities has a couple of fire trucks that they can deploy. So it's just like there was a loss of focus that the people in charge, whether it was the head of the departments or the politicians, it's just like they lost focus on what they're supposed to be doing, which is protecting the community, whether it's fire protection or police protection, and they're focused more on social issues, and they need to come back, and the fire department needs to fight fire, and the police department needs to fight crime, really, in my view.
What do you think of the drones that were flying?
The illegal drone, gosh.
The illegal drones that actually hit the super tanker.
Yeah, it's such a weird first world problem, that you can't fight a fire because the drones are swarming the area trying to get pictures that they can put on YouTube. It's ridiculous.
And I know that guy they caught the guy
Yeah.
who did that.
One of just one. I mean,
Yeah, just one.
I think they said at one point they had 50
Drones?
unauthorized drones flying around there.
Unbelievable.
It is, yeah.
And so how do you stop that in this day and age? To do that, do you do heavier prosecution, or do you? I mean, you can't stop these people. They're going to go. They're what, 10 miles away, flying their drone.
Yeah, yeah. I think weirdly, I think lessons will come for that out of Ukraine, out of the fight between Ukraine and Russia. There's a lot of anti-drone technology that's being developed there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think that'll filter its way into disaster preparedness, so that they can do some of the things that the Ukrainians and the Soviets the Russians are doing there to resist the drones. I think we'll see some of that here soon.
Yeah. So that was another thing that I was interested in, to know that all these drones are going up and
they all want to be on YouTube. They all want to be a.
It's a whole new world. It's a whole different world than.
They all want to be influencers. They want to attract eyeballs. They want to attract viewers so that they can get enough viewership so they can start putting ads on their YouTube channel.
I know just recently they opened up PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, there that goes to Malibu, where all the homes had burned, and the people who still had homes there are just going, this is crazy to let people into the area there, that anyone now can go through there, even though it's one lane in each direction, from what I read. But, it's a tragic, tragic situation, and fire in itself is tragic. And
it's not over either, because these people's agony is just starting.
Yeah.
Because everyone's approaching this from a safety perspective. Karen Bass says, we're going to let you into your properties, but we want everybody to be safe. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that means, but I do know what it means on the ground, and that means that all of the debris, all of the burned ash and the debris, is in their view toxic because it's been burned, and so now it's you've got all these toxic chemicals on the ground, which means that it's all going to have to be handled and removed by hazmat people coming in hazmat suits. You're not just going to be able to go out there
with
a trash can, with a trash can and a flat end shovel. You're not going to be able to do that. No, you got to call a hazmat team to come in and abate your lot. So I mean, it's completely cleaning it from all of the ash and the burned debris, and that. There's not enough hazmat teams in the entire country to do that. So that's going to happen first. And then at the same time, trying to decide what you're going to do. If you're lucky enough to, own your property, or you owe an amount of money that's not going to make you upside down now that your house doesn't exist, and your insurance company makes you relatively whole and you've got money to rebuild. If you've got all that stuff, you're still looking at massive fights with the city agencies who control building, and most importantly, the Coastal Commission. They are real powerful, and they have a lot of regulations that make it very, very onerous to try and build there. And I know the governor's running around trying to waive a lot of these requirements to let people build, but I don't know how successful he's going to be. So they've got to go through this huge bureaucracy to try and get just approval to build something, to rebuild something. And then if they're successful and they rebuild their house, it's not going to be what they had. It's going to be someplace entirely different, with new houses all over the place and new neighbors, probably, because I read that up to 70% of the people who lost their homes are not going to move back.
Sure, I never did.
Yeah, you're just not. You're going to find someplace else to live, and so it's going to be new people, new houses, new neighborhood, and the reality is they're not going to have any peace in these areas for the next, until I would say 10 years out.
It will take them a good, probably I would say 7-8 years, because where we lived. And you look at everything on the hillside there, everything was gone. All there were some beautiful, beautiful homes there. But the thing is, if we said, okay, we want to go and we want to be here, all the trees are gone.
Yeah.
All of the
bushes,
bushes, the shrubbery,
Yeah.
it is burned to the ground.
Right.
And so I'm going, it was beautiful. There's all these pine trees, and now there's absolutely nothing.
Right.
And so why would I want to live in that area
in the desert?
with, again, you know, the PTSD of the fear of fire? That if Kimberly and I smell smoke and it's a windy day, it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, well, my neighbor's doing a barbecue, but that's a whole different feeling. One other point I wanted to bring up that you brought up earlier, all the debris, all of that has to be, they have to find also a place to put that.
It's going to be like a 9/11 response in New York, where they found a huge area there out in Staten Island, and they put down an impermeable membrane on top of the ground, and then they put all of the debris on top of it as they trucked it in from these various locations. And then that was a separate, really expensive project to deal with. And that's what's going to happen this time. So besides all of the reconstructions that's occurring in these communities, the government's going to have to figure out how to deal with this gigantic pile of what they've decided is toxic material, and how they're going to deal with it. It's so expensive. It's just crazy expensive.
It is. So while we're sitting here talking about fire, we're enjoying our fire here in the fireplace, nice and safe.
Well controlled,
And we're back. We haven't done this in a while. Like I said, it's been New Year's, and my wife had the knee surgery. And but now we're back, and we'll keep doing this. We hope you enjoyed our talk about fire. And anything left to say?
That's it for me.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.